Welcome, and thank you for joining us on this edition of the Poke Report. I'm Bailey Burmaster.
And I'm Dan Lindblad. We've got the latest in OSU sports as we preview Bedlam baseball, look at one cowgirl who is nearing an OSU record, and recapping how both OSU tennis and golf did in their Big 12 tournaments.
We got this and more. The Poke Report starts now. Well, we have a lot to get to here on the Poke Report as this school year comes to a close.
That's right, Bailey. We got Bedlam baseball this weekend as the Sooners try to gain ground in the Big 12 at the end of the college baseball regular season approaches.
The OSU baseball team is officially ranked first in the Big 12. Through a difficult non-conference and conference schedule, the Cowboys are ranked 9th in the nation. They were able to sweep Texas and Stillwater and then went on to beat Baylor at home the following weekend. Shortstop Donnie Walton says he's aware of what comes with being first in conference.
We got a target on our back since we won it last year, but if we just keep our heads in the right place and stay focused, we'll be all right.
Senior pitcher Michael Freeman has led the team to 7 victories and is catching attention with his success at the mound. Freeman was recently named to the National College Baseball Hall of Fame National Pitcher of the Year watch list. This past weekend, Freeman and the team headed to Lubbock to take on the Red Raiders and won the series 2-1 after losing the first game. Head coach Josh Holliday says he is proud of how his players fight back, and that's a great quality to have as an athlete.
They are a resilient group, and they have been from day one, and it'll need to continue to be that way to make it through the home stretch.
Oklahoma State has faced its fair share of adversity. Walton was out for over a month due to a hand injury, and Connor Costello has been out for about 2 weeks from a choking incident which caused a hole in his esophagus. With Walton back and Costello recovering, the Cowboys will face OU in Bedlam this upcoming weekend to determine who is number 1. Then the Cowboys will finish off conference play against West Virginia at home before the Big 12 tournament. Joining me now is Poke Report baseball reporter Mason Doherty and O-State TV baseball play-by-play announcer Reese Van Haften. Guys, with being OSU's second to last Big 12 series in the regular season, how do you think the guys are going to do against the Sooners this weekend?
Well, I think the series will be pretty good, actually. I mean, both teams are pretty evenly well matched. You got the pitching pretty well. I mean, OSU has the second best ERA in the Big 12, and then you also have OU being 4th, and the batting is pretty similar as well.
Reese, OU has lost 3 games in a row. How are they going to pan out against this Cowboy team?
Well, pitching is key. The past 3 games, the OU Sooners have given up 16 total runs, which is terrible, and a 5.52 ERA. So they got to continue to pitch well to win games, because on the season they have a 3.18 ERA, which is 4th best in the Big 12. And in games where they give 3 or more runs, they have an 11-18 record, whereas in games where they give 2 or less runs, they have an 18-1 record.
So Mason, who's the guy they're going to be looking to in this series?
Well, I think you have to look at John Perrin, the ace pitcher for OSU. He's coming off a game where he pitched against Tech last Friday, where he was pitching 5 1/3 inning and gave up 4 runs. So he's coming off a shaky start, and he's also had a 3.88 ERA for the season, which for an ace, you like to see a little bit better. He's been pitching on that Friday, the first game of the series, so you like to get off to a good start if you're an OSU fan with him pitching a pretty good game.
Okay, so realistically, how do we see this series going?
Well, in game 1, it's the rubber match. Mason and I were talking about that earlier. It's the most important game. Jake Elliott and Perrin are nearly equal. Elliott has a slight edge in ERA with a 2.15 ERA, but that's the toss-up.
Well, and you've also heard of Michael Freeman, right?
Yeah.
He's be pitching on Saturday. He just got put on the list for a National Pitcher of the Year award. He's had an MVP-like year. Last week, he was Big 12 Player of the Week for the 4th time this season, which actually ties a Big 12 conference record of getting that award so many times in a season, and actually had a .67 ERA as of last week in that week.
So if you give game 1 to a toss-up, game 2 to OSU, you have to give game 3 to OU more than likely. So the pitching is pretty even in that one, Robert Tassin's a little bit better than Tyler Nurden, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I would say that too. Tyler Nurden's got not as much experience, but I would agree with you. It's going to be it's going to go down, I think, to game 3.
So Mason, we know the Cowboys have been suffering from some injuries. You recently took a look at a growing issue that's happening at all levels of baseball. Tell me more.
Yes, Bailey, I did. Tommy John surgery has been a killer in baseball as of late. Pitchers and even positional players have suffered from the injury in the majors. I found out that it might stem from a level of play that comes even before college.
In baseball, an ace pitcher is the go-to guy. He is dependent on to eat up many innings and carry his team to victory based on his arm. But what if that workload causes a major setback and possibly ruins that pitcher's future? That setback is called Tommy John surgery. 2012 had the most Tommy John surgeries in MLB history, while 2015 is on pace to have about 28. And only about 85% of pitchers make it back to the league after the surgery. The causes of the injury start way before the majors. OSU pitching coach Rob Walton says the injury has quadrupled at the high school level.
Kids are playing all year round. Kids are pushing the physical limitations. They're really working out hard. Their bodies haven't matured yet.
Tommy John surgery is caused when the ulnar collateral ligament in the elbow is torn, because when a pitcher throws the ball, that ligament keeps the elbow from bending the other way. But when it is torn, the arm cannot extend out, and it feels like a chicken wing.
Kids now are playing baseball at a higher rate, especially in warmer climates. They are learning curveballs at the age of 12 and are overworking their arms.
These kids nowadays, they play all year round. Where I think when we were younger that, we didn't play, in the summer, probably after July, we didn't pick up a baseball until probably March.
Coach Holliday is on a national committee panel trying to eliminate the Tommy Johns in baseball. He says the players are better monitored in college compared to high school and youth baseball, which Holliday says are out of control.
Little kids playing 100 games, crazy, over-involved parents, psychotic coaches, and it's sad.
Coaches have a higher responsibility in taking care of their pitchers' health. Pitch counts have to be kept in check while also looking for faults in a player's velocity level and his delivery to the plate.
Every pitching coach's nightmare is for a kid to go down, and have to have Tommy John surgery.
For the players, rest on their arms is crucial to their health. Coach Holliday says kids should be kids and play other sports in between baseball seasons like football and basketball. A change must be done to stop the rapid rate of Tommy John surgeries, and it all starts at the younger levels. For the Poke Report.
Thank you, Mason. Don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Coming up on the Poke Report, one OSU softball player tries to etch her name in the record books. And after an early exit in the Big 12 tennis tournament, where does that leave the men's tennis team while the Cowgirls make history?
Make sure to check out the Poke Report website for the backstory on OSU's golf course, Karsten Creek.
It's a really tough course. Most of the guys that I've played with here say that it's one of the toughest courses I've ever played, and I just think it's a good test of golf.
Also, Katie Parrish sits down with a custodian of Boone Pickens Stadium who uses their weight room all year round and has lost over 60 pounds in the process. Reese Van Hatten takes a look at scholarships in baseball, how few players actually get them, and how they compare with high-profile sports such as football.
Offer scholarships best you can based on what you have, and hope that it finds that midpoint that works for you and works for the family.
And Jordan Neal features the hometown kids, how many OSU players stayed in their own backyard and got their start right here at Stillwater High School. All this and more exclusively on OSUPokeReport.wordpress.com.
Welcome back to the Poke Report. I'm Bailey Burmaster.
And I'm Dan Lindblad. The Cowgirls have struggled to find their footing during this rebuilding season. They had to replace 4 starters from the 2014 squad, returning only 2 seniors, outfielder Shelby Davis and shortstop Jasenia De La Cruz.
It's been a rough year for the Cowgirls, Dan, but yesterday it was the youngsters that helped the OSU snap a 7-game losing streak as the Cowgirls swept North Texas in a doubleheader at Cowgirl Stadium. In Game 1, OSU freshman starting pitcher Jesse Hafner throws a complete game shutout that was scoreless until the bottom of the 5th when OSU freshman second baseman Vanessa Shippey drove in a run with a single to left out. In the 6th, OSU freshman Randy O'Donnell hit her second home run of the year with a 2-run shot to left field, securing the 3-0 win for the Cowgirls.
In the nightcap, OSU was first on the board. In the 4th, freshman Maddie Holcomb lined a 2-run triple to right field and scored on a wild pitch, giving the Cowgirls a 3-0 lead. But in the 6th, the Mean Green would rally with 2 runs. But OSU tacked on 3 more runs in the bottom of the 6th. The Mean Green tried to rally again until sophomore pitcher Peyton Walker got the 1-out save, as the Cowgirls take Game 2 6-4.
With only 5 games left in the regular season, the Cowgirls will open their final home series this weekend against the Texas Longhorns, giving one senior a chance at the record books. Justin Packard takes us inside the science of stealing bases.
For the Oklahoma State softball team, getting on base early hasn't been the problem. The Cowgirls have one of the best base stealers in the nation as their leadoff hitter, and she's usually at second a pitch or two later. Senior Shelby Davis has 45 stolen bases this year. Coach Rich Wieligman said her ability to steal messes with everyone on the field.
You know, it's a matter of her threat, the danger of her moving up a base without having to move her with an at-bat is what's huge, and it helps our offense a lot.
On a softball field, there is 60 feet between bases. On average, it takes around 4.2 seconds to run base to base. For a 65-mile-an-hour pitch, it takes just over 2 seconds to reach the plate. That means the catcher has 2.2 seconds to throw the ball 84 feet and try to gun down the runner. In baseball, it takes 4.5 seconds to run the 90 feet in between bases. An 85-mile-per-hour pitch arrives in the same amount of time as a 65-mile-an-hour pitch in softball, 2.06 seconds. That leaves a baseball catcher an extra 0.3 seconds to catch the runner. Wieligman still had a difficult time deciding which sport is harder to steal in.
That's a tough question. I would have to say it's probably harder in baseball because you're working 90 feet. It's just, you're working a little bit farther distance, and it's just such a quicker game that, you know, you get second quicker. You have to be a little bit more accurate with your throws and tags and things like that. So
one of the main differences in softball is base runners have to wait for the ball to leave the pitcher's hand before they leave the base. Some of it is a psychological game too, and there are some ways the base runner can get an edge over the pitcher, and Shelby Davis has figured out one of them.
I don't necessarily slide right into the bag. I try to slide around it, so when they do tag, like if the ball does beat me there, there's nothing to tag because I'm already on the back side of the bag.
For Davis, every second counts. She's only 7 steals away from breaking the record for stolen bases in a season at OSU.
I feel a lot of pressure, or inner pressure, I suppose, to really get the last 7. So, I mean,
For the Poke Report, I'm Justin Packard.
The current record was set in 2007 by Chanel Scott at 52. Davis takes her success and failures upon herself, saying that she would already have the record if she hadn't been thrown out 10 times this season.
You know, Dan, while Davis tries to get the steals record, Oklahoma State has already made history this week. The 12th-seeded Cowgirls tennis team will host their first regional in program history, but they couldn't have accomplished this without a decent conference tournament outing. Courtney May went down to Waco for the men and women's Big 12 tennis tournament.
It's arguably the top conference in the country, and TCU, the number 6 team in the nation, sent the Oklahoma State University Cowboys packing.
We were down 3-0 pretty fast, but then there was a rain delay, then we came back a little bit, had a little hope left, but I mean, we have to give TCU a lot of credit. They played really good.
The Cowboys lost 4-0 to the Horned Frogs in the quarterfinals, and head coach Jay Udwadia says lessons learned from this loss will help fine-tune the team for postseason play.
We know we're a better team. We've learned some lessons, and we're looking forward to postseason now.
Although the Cowboys fell to the TCU Horned Frogs yesterday in the first round of the Big 12 Tennis Championship, the Cowgirls are facing Texas Tech in the semifinals right behind me. The Big 12 champion will be determined tomorrow here at Hurd Tennis Center. Cowgirl tennis shut out the 6th-seeded Kansas Jayhawks in the first round, landing them in the semifinal match, taking on the 2 seed in Texas Tech, Cowgirl junior Maria Alvarez.
I think everyone was really just disappointed after the loss we had. So everyone's gonna focus on what they have to do to like make that as a like correction and like move forward.
The Cowgirls fell to the Red Raiders 4-1, and after losing a close point in doubles, Tech gained momentum heading into singles. Head coach Chris Young.
Gives us a lot of motivation going into the NCAA tournament that we know that the last match we played wasn't our best and give us an opportunity to redeem ourselves.
And the Cowgirls will have that opportunity May 9th through 10th with a home court advantage for their 17th NCAA tournament appearance facing Boston University.
Hosting here is a great opportunity. Like it's the first time in the program history, so we just have to take this opportunity and do it good.
While the women will be playing Boston University for the first time ever, the 19th ranked men's team will travel to College Station to take on a New Mexico University May 8th to the 10th.
The tennis team weren't the only Pokes competing in the Big 12 tournament recently. Men's golf just wrapped up their 3-day event and hopes to win their 10th Big 12 title in team history. Mitch Brown chips in with how the golf team has been playing heading into the conference tournament.
After a high finish last year, the Cowboys are under a tremendous amount of pressure to succeed this season. That pressure has led to an up and down season to this point. In most of their tournaments, the Cowboys have finished in the middle of the pack. OSU began their season at the Carmel Cup at Pebble Beach in California when they finished in 8th place. They followed with a 5th place finish at the Fighting Illini Invitational and then placed 14th at the U.S. Collegiate Championship. The Cowboys then focused their attention to Dallas, where they played in the Royal Oaks Intercollegiate Tournament. OSU finished in 1st place, which was the first and only win of the season thus far. Oklahoma State head coach Alan Bratton sees promise in his young team, although they have been inconsistent most of the season.
I think we've shown glimpses of what we want to be and where we expected to be. And the expectation actually going forward really hasn't changed from the start of the season.
Even though the Cowboys have been up and down this season, one of the bright spots of this young team has been a highly touted freshman from Norway. Christopher Ventura has posted the lowest scoring average for the Cowboys this year. Ventura's best finish came at the Amir Ari Invitational in February when he finished tied for 5th at 12 under par. Christopher says he has played much better than most of his competition, but his expectations are much higher.
Having the Big 12s and regionals and then nationals, I consider those the 3 most important tournaments of the year, and if we can do one of those, I guess it would be a pretty good season.
OSU had a 3-week layoff in between the Augusta Invitational and the Big 12 Championship. For Christopher and the other Cowboys to be able to compete, Christopher says he will have to keep working on his short game by hitting more crisp chip shots.
The Big 12 tournament will be held at Southern Hills Country Club in Tulsa on April 27th through the 29th. Oklahoma State will have a tough road ahead when they face 4 other Big 12 schools ranked in the top 20 nationally. Texas is a clear favorite to win this year, coming in ranked 2nd overall. For Oklahoma State to be able to compete for the championship, Coach Bratton says the Cowboys will have to put a complete tournament together. For the Poke Report, I'm Mitch Brown.
And following the 3-day competition, the Cowboys ended up shooting well over par at plus 52. Individually, Jordan Nieberge and Zachary Olsen led the Cowboys, and both finished tied for 13th. The University of Texas finished on top at just 10 over par.
For the Cowgirls, it was much of the same, finishing in 5th place at 20 over par. However, there was a bright spot. Kenzie Neeson won top medalist honors after an intense 2-hole playoff. Neeson became the 8th Cowgirl to win the honor. We're going to take a quick break on the Poke Report. When we come back, should student athletes be paid? It's the big question that nobody seems to agree with.
We've got Anise McEwen in studio to further discuss this topic when the Poke Report returns on O State TV.
School of Media and Strategic Communication.
You're watching the Polk Report on O-State TV, brought to you by the OSU School of Media and Strategic Communications.
Back to the Polk Report. I'm Dan Lindblad.
And I'm Bailey Burmaster. With the spring season in full effect, some sports have to fall by the wayside, but there's one special week every April dedicated to the one sport that we all know and love, football.
That's right, Bailey. The annual spring game is always a great way to remind us that fall is right around the corner. 16,000 fans showed up to get a glimpse of what the Cowboys would look like this upcoming fall. The expectations are high after a strong finish last year, largely due to the play of quarterback Mason Rudolph and that unforgettable Bedlam win. Fans mobbed him after the game to get a closer look at the up-and-coming quarterback.
A real good team together, a real good offense, defense, special teams. So we're excited. We got a lot of good work in this spring, and we're like I said, we're excited about the season to come.
And in that game, Bailey, White defeated Orange 31-13. But now that we're on the topic of football, a question that gets brought up year after year: should student athletes be paid or not?
Luckily, we have Ocali correspondent Anise McEwen here in studio to assess the situation a bit further. Anise?
Thanks, Bailey. Both the 2015 college football playoffs and NCAA March Madness tournament generated millions of dollars in revenue, much of which will be pumped back into participating institutions. But schools' athletes and fans are now left wondering, how much of that money really belongs to the players? I did some digging to find out where both sides stand. As college sports revenue increases, so does the debate surrounding its athletes. Advocates on one side argue that the multi-million-dollar industry has more than enough money to pay for its revenue sport athletes. On the other side lies the NCAA and its respective schools, who say that paying players would corrupt the amateurism of college sports and be financially impossible for most institutions. The huge sums of money involved, including the nearly $1 billion the NCAA brought in last year, are at the heart of the controversy, and no two sports are more responsible than football and men's basketball.
Well, as you would imagine, it's very important. If we didn't have those two sports, we wouldn't be generating nearly the revenue we are right at the moment.
There's no doubt athletes put in the time and effort to be compensated in some way, but is a scholarship really enough? Organizations like the National College Players Association don't think so. On its own website, the NCPA calls for the $11 billion plan that would give $52 million to men's basketball and football, as well as another $52 million to women's sports every year. But last year's figures show that just 20 of the NCAA's 130 Division I schools made enough to cover their own athletic department's expenses, while fewer than 10 finished in surplus. The ever-widening gap between student and athlete continues to grow, as economists, school administrators, and athletes continue to determine which side they're on. It may only take a single school to decide a player's price. For the Polk Report, I'm Anise McEwen. And I'm here with three analysts to further discuss this controversial issue. First, we have Maurice Johnson, Media Relations Intern for the Oklahoma City Thunder. We have Cody Stavenhagen, Editor-in-Chief of the Ocali and an intern for Major League Baseball. And we have Garrett Wilson, host of KXZY's Cash Sports Radio show. Gentlemen, the NCAA instituted a while back the concept of the student athlete. In your opinion, is that true, and do they stick true to that term and that label? Cody, go ahead.
Well, I think the NCAA almost kids itself just a little bit. Obviously, people are students and athletes, but those are really two competing values. And, I think it creates problems at times. If the NCAA would recognize that, hey, there are some people who are just in school to play sports, I think we wouldn't run into a lot of the issues we're seeing.
Garrett,
I really agree with what he says, that yes, there are a lot of students who are just athletes, but are there to get an education, while others are there just to play sports and further their athletic career. But I do think the NCAA is trying to take an initiative to show that there are more of the student athletes than just the athletes.
I agree with Cody. I definitely think that the term student athlete is too loosely defined. Some people here are here to just get their major and move on, and some people are here to play sports. And a lot of the time, that sport is taking a lot of the student athletes' time, and it turns into more of a job. And for them to not get compensated, that's just not right.
With that being said, with a lot of the major leagues, with the MLB and the NHL, neither of them have a restriction on coming out of high school going into into their leagues. And then you have both the NBA and the NFL having restrictions on their, participants. Does that play into the whole discussion of whether NCAA players, especially in football and basketball, like we discussed, being able to, make money as college players?
This is one rule that I actually tend to agree with for the most part. The one and done rule in college basketball has its problems, but I think in principle it makes sense. In football, obviously, you have to stay at least 3 years. I think that in part is done to benefit the athletes a little bit. In basketball, especially when you could come straight out of high school, you saw some problems with kids just jumping in too early, hoping to make money, and they weren't ready, and in certain cases they failed. So I think that's actually set up to protect the athletes a little bit, and for the most part, I think it works.
So, Maurice, you are obviously in favor of paying student athletes, and one of the issues that you brought up, Cody, was that they aren't really ready to handle the amount of money that comes in.
I think the NFL rule is okay of 3 years, stay in school, but I think the NBA rule of one and done definitely needs to be changed. I think an athlete that's ready to make the jump to professional basketball, professional football should have the option to. Players like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, they made the jump successfully. And other players have done the one and done and been all right, but others haven't. I mean, Nerlens Noel is a recent example. He was in there. He was a projected top 5 pick. He ended up still being that, but he also tore his ACL in that 1 year and potentially lost millions. He ended up being okay and coming back and have a successful year this year. But there are a lot of cases where a kid can come to school 1 year and end up injuring and lose the opportunity of making money completely.
Now, Garrett, you fall in line actually with a majority of Americans. Interestingly enough, a Mayor's poll found that 72% of white Americans believe that NCAA athletes should not be paid, while 53% of African American Americans said that they believe that athletes should be paid. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that you see that is the demographic breakdown of what we see in the United States. Typically, the lower class, you do have a higher population of African Americans in that per capita than you see. So I think a lot of that is some of these athletes that do, especially the ones that want to leave early, come from less well-off backgrounds than other athletes do. So they're looking to make money and a lot of times support their family right off the bat. So they do leave earlier, and I think they're wanting to try to find a way to stay in school and still support their family at the same time. So I think that's kind of where you see that breakdown.
Cody, your take?
Yeah, I think when you start talking about race here, I think you really get into kind of the meat of the issue. And if you don't think it's a racial issue, especially when you talk about paying college athletes, again, I think you're kind of kidding yourself. There was a report out that looked at the historical graduation rates of the teams in this year's Final Four. And 98% of Sweet 16, 98% of the white athletes historically graduate, as opposed to only 55% of the African American athletes. And really, if you just look, nationwide, I think you almost have an unpaid workforce of these college athletes, and especially for these kids in the lower class, there's so much more that goes into it, so much way beyond sports. A lot of them, need this money, and maybe that's why they make a decision to go to the league early. So that's, kind of just how I feel about that. I think race is a huge part of this issue.
Now, interestingly enough, a federal judge last year ruled in favor of a lawsuit that was filed against the NCAA to grant players at least a trust fund that they can get into after they graduate, where they can at least get image, likeness, and identity payments. Your take on that?
I think that's completely fine. I think that's okay. I think that's a good step to making a payment plan for these players for them to get compensated. A lot of these athletes are well known nationwide, even college players. I mean, you can go back as far as, 06, I think, Rose Bowl, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, all them. They were selling jerseys all over the place. That number 5, that number 7, everyone knew who that was, and they were not getting compensated at all. So I think that's a good step.
So when you think of players, like Johnny Manziel and Reggie Bush, Cam Newton, those list of names that have had at least some controversy with, getting compensated for their likeness, Does that show a problem? Do you see that as a problem?
Well, I think with players like Johnny Manziel and Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, in a scenario like this where if you were to set something up for them after they graduate, it necessarily wouldn't benefit them because they are such a big name. They're going to make money right away, even if it's playing sports or even endorsement type deals like that. So that's what you see happen there. The biggest thing I think when you're talking about this is we talked about the race side, but the gender side as well, because almost all female sports universities operate at a cost to the university. So your big money sports like football, men's basketball help generate funds for those sports and allow those sports to continue. Because you get in the issue of, who's going to pay who and what's going to happen, who's going to have this set up. Because everything you do for men, you have to as well do for women, even if those sports that they're participating in aren't making money.
Cody, anything to add?
I think Garrett summed it up pretty well right there. And I think the O'Bannon case was, for the most part, a positive step. At least these athletes, in theory, can be reimbursed after they graduate. I don't know if there's a perfect solution here, but at least it looks like the NCAA is finally taking some steps, to compensate these kids in some way.
Now, Maurice, and one of the issues that Garrett brought up was how do you allot money to players that do play and players that don't, and athletes that are female and athletes that are male. What are your thoughts on how you decide those?
Well, that's where the true problem comes, and like Cody said, there's no perfect system to figure it out. You'd have to find a way to balance the system and scale the payments out. Obviously, between sports would be the main thing, between football and basketball, because those are the highest money making sports. Obviously, with the tournament and now the college football playoff. And then you'd have to try to scale it down to sports like tennis and make it so players from tennis like that seem like they're not getting undercompensated for their work and become inferior or jealous of the bigger sports.
And any final thoughts on the issue as a whole nationally and what we look to see maybe in the future?
Well, I'd say, like I said earlier, finally the ball is starting to get rolling. I think we're going to continue to see some changes. We've seen Power 5 conferences about to start compensating players for cost of attendance. That probably comes with a whole host of other problems when you start talking about recruiting. But like I said, the ball is rolling, and I think that's good. And hopefully, as this happens, the system will continue to be tweaked and perfected.
And I think when looking at this, a lot of people aren't sure if the athletes, if they're being treated unfairly or fairly or not. But the thing to remember, at least from my perspective, is that every athlete who signs up to play Division I athletics and athletics in general, they sign up for it. They know what they're getting into. They're not being forced to do anything. They could be pressured from people. They're not being forced into anything. It's a voluntary action of themselves to come to a university like Oklahoma State, and they know what they're signing up for.
I think the reality of the situation is this is a big step. The ball is moving, but I think more needs to be done. I think these athletes definitely need to be paid. I mean, the situation is that a lot of players are getting forced into bad decisions. You have people who are coming from underprivileged backgrounds. We touched on it earlier. And the reality situation is the average American doesn't know what they're going through. They might have problems at home, family, mother, dad, going through some health issues, just things like that. And they don't have any way to pay for it, so they're forced to leave school, go overseas before they're ready, and then end up being a bust and ending their career.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. It was a very interesting conversation. Let's throw it back to the desk with Bailey and Dan.
Thanks, Anise, for that great panel discussion. Once again, it's a topic that no one can seem to agree with.
But what we can all agree on is that this is the last Poke Report of the spring semester. We would like to thank our crew and especially our executive producers Ted Keon, Jared Johnson, and Jeremy Davis for a great year.
But that's not all. Don't forget to check out the Poke Report website for more OSU sports coverage. I'm Bailey Burmaster.
And I'm Dan Lindblad. Have a great summer. The Poke Report will see you in the fall.